Can
Yes.
you give parents some simple tips on how they can connect? Yes, we know you're coming home, you're tired, you're working multiple shifts, some parents multiple
Yeah.
jobs, and it's still necessary for their children to have that emotional connection. What kind of tips
Yes.
do you have for parents that might just take a couple seconds, like the hug? So the hug would be a good one. Outside of that, what other techniques or strategies can parents use that are quite short, doesn't need a lot of planning or anything like that, to really give that their children that kind of emotional connection?
It's interesting because um, I gave a talk 2 days ago on this very problem. And it arose because a nurse, for 4 days a week, you are working very long hours. And the husband was working every bit as hard as she was. So what do I do? So one of the interesting things about a child's brain is it needs an adult to make it feel safe and secure. However, evolution designed us in such a way that that adult does not have to be the biological parent. It has to be someone with whom the child has this warm, nurturing relationship so that they feel safe. So, I live on an island, and every day I watch, there's these two little kids, and mom and dad are exactly the way you just described. They're working very hard, but grandparents are both retired. And so during the week, the grandparents care for the children. And then on the weekend, mom and dad come and they restore the relationship. But what I've noticed every day is how the grandparents make that child feel safe. And the results are two little kids that are inquisitive and happy and smiling and all that. So we turn to relatives, we turn to close friends. But what if we don't have that? What if we've moved and we're in a new environment? We're not close to family. We've decided to go from Guelph all the way to Germany.
That's us.
So now what do we do? And now one of the wonderful things we can do is we can find, if they're little guys, we find that nursery or that caregiver um, that will also become this secure base. How do we know? Um, the best advice I was ever given, I was trained in psychiatry by Stanley Greenspan. So back in, I don't know, 20 years ago, I asked Stanley this very question. And he said to me, what you want to find is that person who is going to be warm and nurturing, that person that your child will trust. So they're out there. And so what we're going to look for is, I'm not going to look for the one who promises me that if you send me your child, your 3-year-old, I will guarantee that they get into a top university. I'm not so interested in that. This is a little kid. I'm more interested that my child's biology is calm, that my child knows what calmness feels like. And is this an individual that knows how to provide that sense of calm for a child or for several children, and not resort to artificial media like movies or all this is going to do is I can keep the kid quiet, but I'm actually stressing their physiology and not giving their biology what they need, which is an adult, a warm, loving adult that will make them feel safe. So basically what I'm talking about is what you and I studied again, secure attachment. And one of the marvels of secure attachment is a child will be securely attached to all kinds of adults, to an early educator, to a coach, to a neighborhood friend. Our brain wasn't designed in such a way that it can only be with biological mom. It doesn't work like that. A child's brain is reaching out, literally reaching out via the limbic system to adults that are sources of kindness and compassion.
Yes, that's true. And what, as you were speaking, I realized it's also tied to the resilience research as well. So
Yes, it
children
is.
who might be in really difficult neighborhoods or family settings, the ones who tend to survive are the ones who just have that one single adult who they can rely on.
So I don't know if people are going to know what you're referring to. It's a very important point. So we've done a lot of work in this area, and there are a couple I think of. Well, you know what? I did a webinar on this 2 months ago for Self-Rate Global. I think they can access that. But basically, we use something called a Thayer Matrix, and this was designed by Bob Thayer. And what we discovered was resilience is a mental state, not a trait. In other words, it's not a case of saying, well, this child is resilient or this child isn't, but rather when a child is in bottom right of a Thayer matrix, meaning very low energy, very high tension, they will not be resilient. When a child is in top left, which is high energy, low tension, they will be resilient. So then the question becomes, as you just said, the question becomes, well, how do I change my child's state, Thayer state? How do I move them from bottom right? How does a child move from bottom right to top left? And the answer is they cannot do this on their own. They're a kid. So they need an adult who will soothe them, turn off their limbic alarm. What you say isn't nearly as important as just being that warm, comforting presence. And so I think you're quite right. When we study resilience, what we find is that the kids who turned out, they're in very difficult circumstances, but turned out to be resilient, it was because they had at least one of these secure bases in their lives. And the reason is because that person, that adult, helps them do what they can't do on their own, which is deal with all the stress.